Hey there, Solo here, and today I wanted to talk about an upcoming game and a new segment that I'm calling After the Hype, where we talk about some of the upcoming games or recently announced games, but we talk about them when much of the hype and buzz has died down. I've been noticing something in the industry right now where we take the early reactions and the early impressions, and we kind of ride that wave of excitement all the way to either the next trailer, or in some cases, we take it all the way to the launch of the game. And I hope that with a series like this, we're able to place that like right in the middle of that timeline and really take a look at some of those early reactions, early thoughts, some of the developer interviews, just to see if there might be some things that we missed first time around, or in some cases, there might be something that we find out that we need to have more information on, so we can keep an eye out for that once the next announcement or trailer drops or whatever you will regarding the game. So for this first video, I thought we'd talk about Outriders, which is a co-op RPG shooter that is being developed by People Who Fly and published by Square Enix. So to give a little bit of a background in how I actually learned about Outriders, I had no idea what this game was until I noticed that a lot of the content creators that I follow on Twitter, some of them were doing a lot of posts about how they were flown out for this preview event for this upcoming game, and they didn't really say what the game was, but only that they were going to a preview event. And something that I didn't really take notice or really just kind of glossed over was the fact that a lot of these content creators are actually notable members of the Destiny community. And it was a good mix of, you had the PvP people there, you had the PvP people there, but you also had some of the lore masters of, Destiny attending this event, which again, I didn't really pay any mind to until I started seeing some of the articles coming out about the game from the media, and, that infamous question started popping up, will this be the next Destiny killer? And quite frankly and honestly, I'm just getting so tired of that question being popped up and being asked, because it's doing more harm for the industry than it is doing good. Main point being, Destiny is a 6-year franchise, and it's constantly being compared to games that don't even have their launch dates yet. And we're trying to see, who's going to knock Bungie, Destiny, whoever you want to call it, who's going to knock that game off the throne. It's unfair because Bungie has had their flaws. They've worked out their game. They've worked out the kinks, and they've gone through a lot. And to compare that to a game that's barely started, it's doing way more harm than it is doing good, because really you're comparing apples to oranges. And that analogy is actually really relevant to this, because when you start going over some of those early reactions and you start getting more into how the People Who Fly, the development studio, how they describe their game, you'll really see that Destiny and Outriders are more different than they are the same. And I know that some people are drawing, similarities between the two. I know that there's some where they're like, oh, well, you have a 3-man fire team in Destiny, and, your team in the game is, 3-man. They've made some connection to, in Destiny, you have the Hunter, the Warlock, the Titan, and in Outriders, you have like playstyles that are similar to that, but again, the differences are so important to where, how I see it, really, the games actually complement each other rather than they're competing for the same audience. But that's just my personal opinion. And again, there's major differences between the two games that I feel wouldn't hurt to go back and discuss a little bit more in detail. So one of the major key points that separates the two franchises is the fact that Outriders will not be a live service game. Now, in a lot of the interviews, the developers want to make it extremely clear that Outriders, it will not be a live service. They plan on shipping a full experience, or in their words, the full package, when the game launch, which I take to mean that a lot of the way that the content comes with Destiny or live service games, we can expect that not to happen for Outriders. So to draw some examples of what live service updates would look like, for Destiny, you have the Dawning event, you have the Festival of the Lost. In terms of, like, you know, for other franchises like Anthem, you know, their Cataclysm event, those events where there's a continuous drop of content, you know, on a like schedule base, we can expect that not to happen for Outriders. But there is one caveat to that. I feel like if there is there might be a possibility for future DLC to be available for the game. But quite honestly, I feel like when you're talking about your game and you're throwing things like, hey, it's going to be a full package, or we plan on shipping the full experience on launch, that doesn't really leave any room to, you know, say, hey, so we're planning on shipping everything, but be on the lookout for some more content. I feel like those two statements kind of contradict each other. But overall, I don't see this as a bad thing, because, I mean, believe it or not every video game has to be a live service game. I feel like with the live service genre, there's still a lot of work to be done in order to perfect that kind of model for video games. So, you know, for Outriders to say, hey, we're actually not going to go down that route, we're just going to, you know, give the full package, to use their own words, we're going to give the full package at launch. I think that is kind of like preparing everyone for a game that's more about the world, the lore behind the world, and to, you know, find maybe some sort of the secrets behind the worlds. And, you know, I think it's really going to be more story driven based than it is about the, hey, make sure you collect these weapons, or hey, make sure you want to have like all the strongest weapons for this upcoming content, or, you know, this other raid and other piece of content that's coming out. I think it's just more contained within itself, and saying, hey, there's this wonderful world that we want to introduce you into. Have that expectation more than we're teasing you with a little bit more upcoming soon. So another detail that I feel is important to discuss that, you know, separates the two franchises is the fact that Outriders has stated that they will not be launching a PvP or player versus player mode, which I feel, you know, not to go so much off on a tangent, but I feel like the PvP mode is really important for the live service genre, because it really adds to that idea of the live service game being a living and breathing world, and them constantly providing updates to make that world seem like it's, you know, it's still evolving, it's still changing, it's still living and breathing. Plus the fact that PvP often can break up the monotony of, you know, constantly having to do the same PvE content over and over again. I know in the case of Destiny, and especially in the early years with Destiny 1, when there were, you know, quote unquote content droughts, and when people were wondering, hey, you know, I've already done a lot of the, you know, the strikes, the raids and everything, what else is there to do? When there was still more development of future content happening, at least there was that PvP offering to help tied people together and say, hang on, we understand there's a lot more coming to the game, but go on over to PvP. Essentially, no two games are the same, so at least when you're stepping into PvP, you really don't know what to expect. But to tie that back to Outriders and why they might not want to be launching a PvP mode, is the fact that PvP can actually like break your game, especially when, you know, there's exploits out there, there's, you know, people out there that legitimately they will try to break your game. And there's nothing more, you know, horrifying than to have one player, you know, have an exploit, and then all of a sudden they post onto YouTube about how to do this exploit, and then all of a sudden everyone's, you know, abusing that mechanic, and then with that, having to go into the game and fix that is actually technically a live service thing. It goes back into that live service, making sure that the world is living, breathing, and evolving. And Outriders may not, you know, they may understand that, and they're like, our goal is to ship a full experience, we don't want to have to go back and constantly, you know, change one element or fix one element, and then, you know, all of a sudden someone's like, oh, this weapon is OP, and then everyone's only using this one weapon, so we have to go through and tune the weapons and everything. That's not what Outriders is about. And that actually still leads me to believe that, you know, Outriders is going to be more focusing on the world, on the story of the secrets of the world, and, you know, making sure that, you know, when you're buying or when you're going to be going into the world of Outriders, that's really what you should be focusing on, or if that's an interest to you, that's what you should be looking forward to with Outriders. Well, that's all that I have for you today about Outriders, and I know that there are several other similarities and differences that, you know, we can discuss about Outriders versus Destiny, but I feel like with the live service aspect and the PvP offering, I feel like those are two points of several that help make Destiny. And with the narrative about Outriders being that this could potentially be the next Destiny killer, I just fear that, you know, if we're not talking about it now, there's the possibility for frustration or anger when people see other, you know, marketing trailers or any information about the game, and they're wondering, well, when are the updates coming? You know, will I be able to fight other players? Why am I not able to fight other players? What am I supposed to do after the game? It really seems like Outriders is looking to be its own game. It's looking to stay in its own lane, and I feel like it's important to discuss those now, so that now that we understand a little bit of what we're not going to get, we can look towards other announcements and future announcements and trailers and really see, you know, what is this game offering that we can be excited for. But of course, let me know in the comments below, are you excited for Outriders? You know, what was your interpretation of the trailer when you first saw it, if you did see it? Was it something that was still on your mind, or was it after the buzz died down, so did your interest? Please share below. Sharing is always caring. And thank you so much. For more content like this, please go ahead and hit the thumbs up or subscribe if you want to see more content in the future. Thank you guys again so much. Solo says so long.